Hi folks, so the purpose of this video is to take stock of where things are at now that we have just made it past 2 eclipses. And before I start putting out other videos or expanding on where the planets are at, I think it's important to pick up the pieces and take stock of where we're at. We might indeed be feeling like we're in that place in general. We're certainly in that place in the lunar cycle, which is a 28-day cycle that starts with one new moon and ends when we get to the next new moon. And the next new moon is on January the 24th in Aquarius in about 6 days' time. So we're in the final week of a lunar cycle. And as the week progresses, indeed, we are in a phase or a state of wrapping things up, number one. And as you head towards the 24th, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, your energy might flatten out. It might get depressed. You may want to put your feet up. You may want to rest. You may want to purge this last lunar cycle, which was also kicked off by an eclipse on December the 25th, 2019 in Capricorn. So just know that we are, if you're familiar with Tarot, it's like the 7 of Pentacles card where you have been working over the past 3 weeks and some part of you, and there's still work that needs to be done, but you're just finally, you're putting the hoe down and resting yourself on the hoe and taking stock of where things are at and getting ready to finish up this last lunar cycle. And as you head towards the 24th, try to catch your breath and rest a little so that after the new moon on the 24th, the next lunar cycle can begin again. The larger theme of this particular video has much more to do with how we might be feeling after the eclipses. Eclipses occur back to back. A lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse, or a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse, and rarely 3 eclipses in a row. So this fortnight, typically, between 2 eclipses can be really can be quite intense. And it's not always that eclipses bring negative or challenging things. Eclipses can also bring positive things and culminations. So as we head past about a week after the lunar eclipse, and we may have all felt these eclipses in all sorts of ways, disorienting ways, even if they were positive, insofar as that they bring in change, and also disorienting so that if they did not culminate in something horrible or terrible, during this eclipse time frame, things can be anxiety provoking or energies can go up somehow. It just feels like it's a momentous time, and indeed for many people it is, or it can be. There were 2 eclipses, one on December the 25th, a solar eclipse, and then one on January the 10th, a lunar eclipse. And first I want to focus on the January 10th lunar eclipse, which was a culmination of things that started around July the 2nd, 2019. So July the 2nd, 2019 was a solar eclipse in Cancer, and January 10th, 2020 was the corresponding lunar eclipse in Cancer. That's one 6-month odd cycle. Now, whatever this cycle is bringing to culmination or fruition in some ways is going to be back in our consciousness again between June the 10th or June the 20th of 2020 and August the 20th of 2020. Roughly. So we're not done. It's going to come up again in June, July, August, particularly in July. We have 2 new moons in Cancer this year, one of which is an eclipse and one of which is a normal new moon. So we're not done. We're not done with the sign of Cancer yet and where it sits in your chart. But the full moon lunar eclipse in Cancer was really one hell of a full moon and one hell of an eclipse, insofar as you had the moon strong in her sign and full in Cancer, opposing the Sun, Ceres, Mercury, Saturn, and Pluto. I think in that order. Ceres and Mercury may be in a different order, and they were really extraordinarily close to each other, these 5 bodies. And we also got Jupiter in Capricorn. So you have these 6 heavy hitters on the one hand and a full moon on the other hand, and issues of themes related to mothering, mothers, nurture, communications, contracts, thinking, processing, data, technology, writing things, putting things down in writing, and a codification, a karmic codification to some extent of power or hierarchies, or a culmination of things that are seemingly out of our control to some extent. It could have been themes related to this particular full moon. Certainly as we headed to the eclipse, I mean, if you look at, and it's an emotional eclipse in Cancer, and if you look at some of the things that occurred during the world, Capricorn is Capricorn is misunderstood often to be a masculine sign. It's actually a feminine sign, which is really interesting in and of itself in terms of its conservatism and its desire to preserve and its desire to achieve. You would think it's a masculine sign, but it's a feminine sign. So you have an eclipse in two feminine signs, one of which is characterized by its dryness and its lack of emotion and its respect for power and hierarchy and structures and convention, and the other that is all about emotion. Out of the three water or the emotional signs, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, it really can be argued that Cancer is the most elemental of the emotional signs. It is the most emotionally pure in terms of both its needs and its actions, emotionally simple, not nearly as deep and complex as Scorpio, and not nearly as private or evolved, perhaps, as would be one way to put it, as Pisces. So as we deal with an emotional eclipse, and eclipses bring things to culmination, it really does matter where the eclipse occurred in your chart. So number one, where's Cancer in your chart? And what house does it occupy, and what does that house stand for? Important to know. If the full moon in Cancer is occurring, eclipse in Cancer on Jan 10th occurred in the sector of the chart that has to do with your career, it's going to bring something very specific to light and very specific as perhaps a culmination than if you have the full moon in Cancer in your 12th house of endings and conspiracies and behind the scenes activities or spirituality or rest or karmic results. So how this full moon eclipse, and indeed the eclipse cycle that has been in place since July the 12th of 2018 is playing out is a general theme. And this 6-month period of the eclipses in Cancer were an important part of it because it's the only complete eclipse cycle in Cancer that we get. As I said, we had a brief smidgen of this in July 2018 to September 2018, and we get a conclusion between June 20th of 2020 and August 20th of 2020. So wait for that. But let's say that the eclipse brought something positive, a news, an offer. There's still a picking up the pieces aspect to that. The change has occurred, the rug has been pulled from under our feet, something positive may have come, something negative may have come, something mysterious may be coming, something emotionally culminating has occurred. And so this idea of taking stock of where things are at, picking up the pieces, which is going to be the title of this video, of where we're at, and really resolving and deciding what actions need to be taken. To some extent, you kind of need to, with an eclipse, let the ocean waves kind of do their thing, and as things start to calm down, we get to regain control of the boat again. I like to say that eclipses are when God takes the wheel. Well, this is where the handoff occurs, where God is like, all right, I've done my stuff. I've created the next set of developments for you to cope with. And there's a transition now to us taking hold of the wheel. And as we do that, we pick up the pieces and evaluate and take stock of where we're at and take stock of what we understand of what has occurred or is happening and resolve to take certain actions around that. By all means, look at this idea of picking up the pieces as a call to action. What do I need to do now? So if, for example, you got an offer for a job, there's stuff that now needs to be done to align with that offer and where things are going. And I would imagine that if it happened as a result of this eclipse, it's significant. Take a look at what happened with this eclipse, even socially and politically, whether you live in India to some extent, or whether you live, not to some extent, whether you live in India, or whether you live in the States with the whole Iran escalation, or frankly, looking at the UK and the whole sort of Duchess and Duke of Sussex royal family. These are emotional culminations, and just looking at world affairs over the past 2 weeks will highlight to you what eclipses do and what they feel like and what they bring to culmination. With the full moon, all this conservative, power respecting energy got its, when the full moon came in, there's a kind of a everybody stop. Everybody try and take stock of where things are at, and here's what I'm doing. It was an opposition between the conservative and the heart-centered. And certainly for now, with the Iran escalation, we thought it was going in a certain way, and when the full moon happened, there was everybody chill out. moment. And my last eclipse video will expand more on this. And this kind of emotional culmination, the moon in Cancer being strong, and somehow, no matter what, when Mercury is this close to the sun, Mercury-related activities, it's a little bit like Mercury has gone retrograde, and you may be feeling this kind of slightly Mercury retrograde energy, you know, phone calls and things not happening, and things, communication being a little bit awry, and logistically things not being dealt with. Mercury's combust, it can't exercise its power. Saturn and Pluto were combust, they can't exercise their power. So with this full moon, themes related to Ceres, nurture, Mercury, communication, contracts, Saturn and Pluto were highlighted. In Hindi, there's a term we use, buddhi prasht, you know, a lack of, a destruction of good sense and intelligence. And to some extent, in the sign of Capricorn, in this traditional conservative, hierarchical, unemotional sign of Capricorn, feminine sign of Capricorn, you had this, this eradication, this destruction of, let's just call it, good sense. And then opposite it, you had this strong moon around the 12th that opposed it, shone its full light, and tried to create some sort of an opposition from a heart-centered place, whatever that looks like. This does not mean, it could be that if something came to culmination for people, it could be something related to Mercury. That doesn't mean that if you got an offer or something positive happened that it's bad. It just means that it's in relationship to that. But as the eclipse moves forward, we get to regain control of these planets that were affected by being so close to the sun. And as they gradually regain power, they exercise greater clarity and greater stability. So as we take the wheel, whether what occurred was dynamic and positive, or whether what occurred was a brief holding back of foolish forces. Traditionally, eclipses are not the time to make decisions, and yet often we feel called upon to do so. And part of it is that the energies are in such a complex place. Decisions made in January with regard to how to proceed or how to get something done or how to be pushed, you know, unless it's a much longed for or wished for, it depends. What I'm about to say really depends on where the eclipse occurred. If something happened in your career sector and you get admission to a college, or you get an offer, that has a very different feeling with regard to whether or not that's sensible than if it's happening, if this is happening in another part of your chart. So you've really got, this is a general video, so you've really got to take what I'm giving you with a grain of salt. But there is something about this idea of picking up the pieces, and for many people it could be that what has occurred or what is going on or what is sort of in place kind of lacks good sense or lacks a certain kind of intelligence behind it. And so the call to action is around taking the wheel around this. It could be an emotional fallout. It's a positive full moon lunar eclipse insofar as the moon full opposing planets that are not at their strongest or their best and are more conservative calls a timeout and exercises her power. But at the same time, it's not as if those forces that she temporarily put a halt to have stopped. And then there's the larger theme of the full moon eclipse. So there is this notion of paying attention to what has fallen to the floor as the rug was being pulled, and finally a call to action to take stock of things and to start to pick up the pieces and determine what you're going to do and how you're going to move forward. What has worked for you, what has not worked for you, and even if something positive has come your way, there's a whole set of tasks now that needs to be done and taken care of. The solar eclipse on December the 25th, is a solar eclipse. So it starts something in Capricorn that is going to culminate around July the 4th of 2020, with February the 25th and May the 4th being important dates. And indeed, the middle of February to the end of March, You know, all these planets have been in Capricorn. Mercury's now moved into Aquarius. The Sun in a couple of days moves into Aquarius, and they're going to leave behind Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto, which is enough. But on February the 17th, Mars comes into Capricorn. So action related to the 25th of December eclipse is going to occur from the middle of February to the end of March. We're not done with where the sign of Capricorn is. But if you're feeling a new set of energies that are coming in, outside of this culmination that has just occurred, and drama and intensity that has occurred over the past 2 weeks, depending on where your chart is, culmination offers completions, drama, intensity. If you're feeling new energies enter your life in some way, which are somehow a replay of themes that occurred in the first half of 2019, those are likely occurring due to the December 25th solar eclipse. And that is going to have its own waves of development. We have Mars in the sign of Sagittarius, so if you know where Sagittarius is in your chart, I would not be surprised if a fair amount of action and activity is occurring in that part of the chart and you're driven to do it. And it could be that it is a source of joy. Now, if you're a Capricorn ascendant and Sagittarius is in your 12th house, you could be dealing with things that are not quite so pleasant. So again, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But Mars in Sagittarius has a certain exuberance around it, and Sagittarius is kind of unrelated to wherever the eclipses are occurring. So during this time, if you found that you have to give attention to a different part of your chart, you are dealing with something related to illness, but then there's something going on with regard to children or career that has taken up a lot of your time. You know, that kind of stuff, where in the middle of it, some portion of your energy is going to something pretty unrelated, could be somehow linked to the Capricorn eclipse, and could be a source of joy and a letting off of steam. See where Sagittarius is in your chart and understand that till February the 17th, you're going to be continuing to spend a certain amount of energy and drive there. You can't ignore where Mars is in a chart. A lot of energy and action is taken in that part of the chart. The sign of Capricorn is going to continue to develop the themes of the new moon solar eclipse that occurred on Christmas, even if the next new moon of January the 24th occurs. The solar eclipse cannot be ignored. It's its own 6-month cycle and path, with the middle of February to the end of March becoming quite active there. The sign of Aquarius, the signs of Capricorn and Pisces show more intensity than Sagittarius and Aquarius. The sign of Aquarius had Venus there over the past 3 weeks, so she could have brought offers or communication or relationships or the potential for financial things, financial opportunities in the part of the chart that has to do with Aquarius. And this is going to see greater but more benign intensity develop. Mercury's here, so whatever Venus brought may now take on a communication contractual angle, thinking, processing, speaking, putting things in place. And the Sun comes in here tomorrow, for all intents and purposes, I think, in the next couple of days. And then on the 24th, actually not tomorrow, maybe the 20th. I think it's the 20th. And on the 24th, we have the new moon. So the sign of Aquarius gets its annual review and annual boost of activities. The sign of Pisces, Venus has entered Pisces. So for a couple of weeks, we're going to see some blessings there. But the sign of Pisces is really going to be developing its own intensity, because on February the 17th, I think, or February the 20th, Mercury goes retrograde there. And so Venus is there, she's going to move on, but then Mercury will come in here, Mercury will go retrograde here, the Sun will come in here, we'll have a new moon at the end of February in the sign of Pisces. Pisces is going to develop its own, and somewhere we had a Mercury retrograde in Pisces in March and April of 2019. So somewhere those themes are going to come back. There is a narrative being built. There's a narrative that is being built between planetary transits and the way they're communicating with each other in Sagittarius, if you know where that is in your chart, Capricorn, the next sign, if you know where that is in your chart, Aquarius, the next sign, if you know where that is in your chart, and Pisces, if you know where that is in your chart. There's a narrative that is somehow being developed. Some of these events are linked, some of these are seemingly independent. And then, of course, on the 10th, we had this Cancer eclipse. So I really just, and till the end of January, there is still a speed to things. As we head to the middle of February and Mercury gets ready to go retrograde, things will start to slow down a certain amount. So just have this awareness. Take a step back. Pick up the pieces, whatever has occurred over the past month or so, but particularly the past 3 weeks. Take stock of situations. Figure out now, as you get back, as God hands the wheels of your cart back to you, it's a call to action. Determine what it is that you feel you need to do. And if certain things occurred over these past 2 or 3 weeks that are positive and a culmination and offer and you're excited and they set you forward, then it's a call to action that then looks at what events and actions you need to take to support whatever has come in that's positive. But if it feels like certain things that have happened have lacked good sense or clarity, or are somehow related to power dynamics and hierarchies and authorities and things being codified, but they are either unethical or wrong, or somehow wires are crossed or unclear, then the call to arms may be around how to disentangle the eclipse energy. And just, if you know your chart, see how these 4 different houses, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces, are starting to be affected by the different planets that are in there. As I do more videos, I'll start to pick apart each of these planetary transits. So we made it through the eclipse month. It's time to take stock of where things are at. It's time to take back control, or you're going to be given control over what happens next, and time to move forward accordingly. If you liked this video, found it useful, feel free to share it. If you're interested in me doing a reading or me creating an easy to read version of your chart, you can contact me on that too. My contact information is going to be in the description area, and more to follow. Thanks for your time and your attention.